Welcome to Small Town Tales, a podcast where we hear stories of the paranormal, haunting legends, and all things spirit. Join us as we explore the unknown. Now, here's your host, C.L. Thomas.
Hello, podcast listeners. Welcome to another edition of Small Town Tales. This is C.L. Thomas with special guest Tim Dennis of Darkness Radio. Tim, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking me to be on your show.
So, getting started, what got you into the paranormal?
Well, the paranormal kind of followed me. I had experiences with it from a very young age. It really started with different things happening as a child and then kind of progressing from there. I did the thing that most kids do, and before you had caller ID, I'm that old, before caller ID, where the phone would ring and I'd tell my mom, oh, it's Auntie Lorraine on the phone. And she would say, oh, no, honey, I'm sure it's not Auntie Lorraine. I'd say, no, go pick it up. It's Auntie Lorraine. She'd pick it up and there's my Aunt Lorraine.
Oh, wow.
And she'd go, oh, well, that's kind of weird. Or I'd play what I thought was a guessing game. And I'd say, oh, it's so-and-so on the phone, or it's this and that, or, and I'd do it just to see if I could do it, and see if I could guess and see if I was right. And a lot of times I was, which I thought was kind of weird, but I didn't think anything of it. It's not like I got this face in my head or anything like that. It just kind of hit me. Oh, I think Lorraine's on the phone. So that I'd tell my mom, oh, it's Aunt Lorraine, or it's Auntie Jean, or it's Grandma, or, that's calling. And then my great-grandfather, my Grandpa Trombley, who was my dad's grandfather, was ill. And he had cancer of the jaw and had his jaw removed. Oh, wow. Which used to scare my sister to death. We used to play cribbage with him a lot, and he couldn't really talk. He used to shove a tissue in his mouth all the time because he would drool. Because obviously there's nothing there to stop anything, any saliva or anything like that. So he would, and when he would talk, of course, not anything's really working with the mouth. So it was kind of it was kind of guttural. So my sister would run and hide behind my grandparents when we'd go to visit Grandpa Trombley. Well, I didn't let that scare me or anything like that. So I would go and I'd go sit with Grandpa Trombley and we'd play cribbage because that's the one way we could communicate. We'd play cribbage and he would kind of nod, or he would kind of, good job, or, he'd kind of communicate in the ways that he could. So I felt particularly close to him, as close as you could for a kid of, 9 or 10. Playing cards with your great grandpa. And we knew he wasn't well. We knew he was having another bout with cancer, but my grandma never talked to me about stuff like that. We always kind of kept illnesses in the family kind of away from the kids. We didn't really talk to kids about stuff like that. That wasn't stuff that we let them know if an adult wasn't doing well. So I had no idea how he was doing. I just knew he was in the hospital and he was sick. So I went to sleep that night, and I had a dream. I had a dream that he was in the hospital, and my grandma was sitting on one side of his hospital bed, and my Aunt Pat, my grandma's sister, was sitting on the other side of him. And I'm watching this from the ceiling, like I'm floating on the ceiling, and I'm looking down on them.
Oh, wow. So you had sort of like an out-of-body experience?
Yeah. Like I kind of jumped into the astral plane and I was looking down on him. But I didn't know that at the time. I'm a kid. I just know that I'm watching this. And I'm watching them saying different things to him, like, it's okay, Pa, it's okay. You've had a long life, a hard life. It's okay to let go. It's okay. You can go see Mom now and all this other stuff. And I'm like, why are you telling him it's okay to go? That's my buddy. And I was getting sadder and sadder. And I just see him kind of take this last breath and slump, and I see them crying, and then I see them hugging, and then it shocks me. I think, oh my God, is it because I'm here? Did I kill him? And I wake up and I start crying and I run to my parents' room and this is a story I've told before on Darkness Radio, but I jump in between my parents, and this is at the time where I believe it was late 70s, early 80s, where you didn't really have a phone in your bedroom, but
right.
Uncannily enough, my dad had a princess phone next to the bed because he was in computer IT at the time, which was special. But he also got calls in the middle of the night in case mainframes went down and stuff like that. Back when computers ran on tapes and things like that, whole computer mainframe systems, which is kind of funny to think about now. But he would get calls in the middle of the night in case he had to go in. And he was a project manager, things like that. So I dive in between the middle of them, and it's Saturday. I think it was Saturday morning because cartoons were on. It had to be Saturday morning. That's the only time cartoons came on. So I'm crying, and my dad said, "What's wrong, buddy? What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Grandpa Trombley's dead. Grandpa Trombley's dead." And he said, "No, honey, no. Grandpa's sick, but he's not dead. He's in the hospital. He's not feeling well, but he's not dead." I said, No, he's dead. He's dead. I saw it. And he just kind of looked at me like, "No, buddy, you just relax." He said, "You just had a bad dream." And my mom's kind of looking at me like, what exactly is going on, blah, blah, blah. And she's kind of rubbing my back. And all of a sudden the phone rings about 10, 15 minutes after I've told them that Grandpa Trombley's dead. And it's my grandma. And she said, "Honey, I wanted to call you to let you know that your grandpa passed overnight in the hospital." And she starts, and I kind of told them the story of what I saw. I said I was on the ceiling. I saw Grandpa, and Grandma was on the left side of him, and Aunt Pat was on the right side of him. And she, Grandma was telling Grandpa this, and Aunt Pat would say it was okay to go, and they were saying you had a hard life and this and that. And so Grandma starts describing the scene and what exactly went down in the hospital. And I said, "Ask Grandma this, ask Grandma where she was." And my dad just looks at me, and he gives me this look like it was kind of like shock. And "You better go in the other room, you little freak," kind of that look. Even though he didn't mean it that way, he did love me, but it was kind of like, okay, this is hitting a little close to home. Meanwhile, my mom is on the other side of the bed, and she was kind of into the whole ESP thing at the time, because that was kind of hip for the 70s, late 70s, mm-hmm. early 80s. And she's like, "Oh, my baby has ESP. My baby has ESP." Celebrating that whole thing. And in the meantime, I still think I killed my grandfather, and my dad just looked at me and said, "Go in the other room and pour yourself a bowl of cereal and watch cartoons." And I thought, God, okay, so there's really nobody to talk to. There was no Chip Coffee. There was no Psychic Kids. There was no, no one really to lean on. And that was the first time I really had an experience with the paranormal, the supernatural, that I really couldn't, explain.
So in paranormal, though, you've gone on to do just about everything, haven't you?
I've done a lot. And I've had a lot of adventures. Some of them fun, some of them not so fun. But I guess to kind of give you an idea, there was a time where these little visitations kept going on, and I kind of shut myself down. I didn't want them anymore. And so I tried to get away from them. And it was only when I was working in radio and Dave approached me about wanting to do a show that I thought, well, yeah, I have always had this interest. I watched In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, and I looked at it with fascination. There was always one eye that was fascinated and curious, and people have this. I'll tell you, the one thing that I absolutely laugh at is there's some people that think, "Oh, well, you don't have that much of a fascination in the paranormal. You have fascination with other things, and you just kind of, you go along with for the ride on these shows." I really am quite fascinated. When these things have happened to you since you were a small child, you're in it, Right. It's kind of like, being a gymnast and having been trained since you were little. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's been with you the entire time. I've had supernatural experiences since I was young, and it's continued to happen throughout my life. Right now, as we speak, I'm in my studio. I mean, we're on a video conference call. I have a ghost here in my basement.
Who is it? Do you know?
He's one of the former owners of the home.
That's so cool.
And we have an absolutely wonderful relationship.
That's pretty cool. Like, how do you know though that? Like, how did you know that he was in your home?
Oh, he made himself known.
Like how? He knocked over chairs? Did he call your name?
He threw it. Well, this is kind of what happened when we moved in here. It started. I shouldn't say it started innocently enough. I wonder if I still have this rock on the back wall of my studio here. I do. Yes. Okay. So you're going to hear this kind of crunchy thing here. Okay, so there's a mineral I got from a listener in Australia, and it's called organite. And you can see I'm holding it up for you it's like a pyramid shaped.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is supposed to repel spirit. It says the organite generator helps bring positive balance and well-being to yourself and your surroundings. Okay. And it's supposed to be it's supposed to be a positive energy type thing, but it's also supposed to help repel spirits. I brought this little thing downstairs, right? I set it down I have like a little living area that's got it's got big screen TV, it's got couch, recliner, things like that. And then I've got my studio set up down here, and I put this right next to the chair, right next to the recliner on the coffee table. And then I have different posters that are up in the living room. Well, about 2 days in, all of a sudden I hear this crash downstairs, and I go, "What the hell was that?" So I walk downstairs, and I know a lot of people love my fascination with wrestling. I have an ECW poster because back in the day, I worked for the ECW street team when they had a pay-per-view here in Minnesota. And I passed out flyers and got tickets to the show and all that other stuff. And I had the ECW poster for the pay-per-view. It was framed, and it was ripped off the wall. When I say ripped off the wall, the nail was still in the wall, and it was 4 feet away from the wall and face down in the middle of the floor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's how we began our relationship. It was just a pull off the wall and wham, right on the floor. I went, okay. So I decided to do some research on the home, for lack of a better term, and found out that there was the last owner of the home before our landlords bought the home. Had a husband who was here for quite a while, but eventually fell ill. But his wife was not very nice to him. In fact, I talked to the neighbor across the street, and she beat him repeatedly.
What?
Yes, he was handicapped. He
Oh, that's terrible.
When he first moved here, there's a workroom at the end of the hall from the studio. Gorgeous workbench and everything. And that's where, before he fell ill, was where he would work on things. And I get it. This was his area. Okay. So here I come in and I build a studio, and there's a workbench down here. And so, I kind of took over the area, and I didn't really have a conversation with him. I just did. Right.
But you could feel him and everything, right?
I didn't at first. I wasn't thinking. Okay. And maybe this is good advice for people who move into a new home, and then they do have an experience with spirit, and they think automatically, oh my God, something happened. Oh, I need to call an exorcist. I need to call somebody to come in and sage my home and get rid of this thing. Not necessarily. Okay. So here's kind of what happened. So I have this rock. Okay. So I think, okay, well, obviously I pissed it off with the organite. Okay. So I said, well, first thing I need to do is move the organite, because obviously it doesn't like that. It's giving off a frequency that it doesn't like. So I picked up the organite. I moved it to my studio. Okay. So I'm sitting in here one day, and I'm recording a couple of different episodes of the show. And all of a sudden I hear, now keep in mind during the day when I'm either making phone calls or I'm editing or I'm doing something that doesn't require me to be on mic, I'll put on, you're going to think this is funny, I'll put on some sort of sports programming. So I'll put on like Colin Cowherd on FS1 or some sort of sports talk just to kind of keep something on in the background. All of a sudden, as I'm recording, keep in mind we're recording a show, I hear, and I hear noise and I hear bass and it like the TV is on in the other room. I'm like, what the hell? So I text upstairs to intern Yoko and I say, intern Yoko, I said, do you have the TV on upstairs? I said, can you turn it down? Because it's really loud down here. And I think it might be coming through on my mic. And she says, no, I don't have anything on upstairs. She said, it sounds really loud downstairs. Do you have something on downstairs? I'm like, no, I don't have anything on. I don't think. She goes, I'm going to come downstairs real quick and see. I said, okay. So she comes downstairs. She looks and she opens the studio door very carefully and goes, the TV is on her system. And she holds up the remote to show me that all the battery power is drained out of the remote.
Oh, wow.
So essentially whatever turned on the entire system, speakers, because there's an old fashioned receiver that's hooked up to like full stack speakers. And then, so it's the receiver, speakers, TV, and Apple TV, Apple 4K TV. Everything is turned on all the way up. And then the TV power or the remote power is blown out. You can't fire up the remote again. The batteries are blown out. And
so
I
that
said,
entity had drained everything just to turn on the television? Just
to turn on the TV to watch Colin Cowherd. So evidently he got impatient and was like, okay, well, time to watch Colin Cowherd. So as weird as this sounds, I had to have a talk with him. Right? Right. Sound weird, sound unusual. So here I am sitting in the middle of my living room downstairs. And so I say to the spirit, I say, you know, we both kind of have to get along here, but we both can get along in a great way. Whenever I'm down here. And here's the other thing too. He hates it when you turn all the lights off. That's when things get thrown off the wall. And that's when things start to get moved and he bangs things around. He doesn't like it when you turn all the lights off. So I leave one light on for him when I go upstairs. Isn't that weird?
This entity knows that you're there. Do you think he sees the house as you have it or as he had it when he lived there?
I think he sees it in modern day, but I think he's okay with sharing it. The reason being is that the wife had him sent to a convalescent home. I mean, she beat the tar out of him and then had him sent to a convalescent home. So he didn't get to enjoy the spoils of redoing the home, of building this beautiful home. And then off he went. You know, that's she really shuffled him off to Buffalo, and then he, sat him in a corner, overdrugged him, and he died.
Oh, that's sad.
So then he came back here to enjoy his home. And now who's this dingbat with the studio speaking into a mic, and what's he doing in my home? Well, so I had a talk with him and I just said, listen, we can both be here. You like sports. I like sports. I take it you're a Vikings fan. I'm wearing my Vikings sweatshirt. I said, are you a Vikes fan? If you are, hey, we'll watch games together. You want to hear more about different sports? Hey, I'll throw on Colin Cowherd for you whenever I'm not recording. But keep in mind, when I'm sitting in front of this desk and I'm talking in this microphone, I can't make noise. We can't make noise together. And I hear him walking. I hear footsteps up and down the hallway as I'm sitting here in the studio. I know he's here, but I just know that's the old man.
Is he quiet for you now?
Yeah, most of the time. He doesn't throw things off the wall anymore. And I'll throw on something on my iPad and I take it he's over my shoulder watching.
Jumping back just a few steps, you mentioned that, and then I have another question with something you just said. You said that you kind of shut it off after a while when you were younger. I kind of had a similar, I've been seeing ghosts since I was like 2 and was able to communicate with them and everything. And then I got to a point in my life, I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in 79. But when I was a teenager, I think I kind of shut everything off. Is that your experience too? Or is that, I guess it's 2 questions in one. One, it seems like a lot of kids from the 70s and 80s have these similar experiences. And then the other question is, why do you think we get to the point where you turn it off?
Well, the reason being is because a lot of us were latchkey kids. You don't have latchkey kids these days. You have a lot of helicopter kids, You have kids that, for better or for worse, their parents are just helicopter parents. They're swarming around their kids and they're trying to avoid being what they weren't. And that's not good, bad, or indifferent. That's not casting judgment on anybody's parenting. It's just that there's more attention to kids these days, and that's not a bad thing. But honest to God, we could have fallen in a pit of molten lava, and our parents would have said, "Shake it off." We got something, somewhere to be. I think the reason why it was turned off is because you didn't necessarily have a fail-safe, or you didn't feel safe enough to one, bring it out to somebody and tell them about the experience, and have someone say, "It's okay, I'm here with you and I'll walk you through it and explain to you what it was and treat you like you were sane." That's one. And 2, I think the other part of it is you're afraid to have it again because you didn't know what was going to happen to you. Nobody would explain to you what was going to happen to you. The other part of it too is it wasn't acceptable in society. Who are you going to go to? Are you going to go to a church leader? A church leader is going to try to, is going to think you're possessed or something. And they're going to try to, dunk you into a vat of holy water and try to get rid of it for you. There was no such thing as a psychic that was going to come forward at that time and tell you, you have this wonderful gift, let's develop it. I can't name one in 1979 that would have come forward and said, "You have this wonderful gift, let's develop it." There wasn't one. I mean, even if Uri Geller was bending spoons on TV, he was doing a trick. That there was nobody at that time. Right. And if there were, they were in parlors with a crystal ball, and they were making quick money. There was no legitimate psychic out there that made themselves known and said, "We realize there are kids that are up and coming that don't know how to handle this gift." It was only when you had guys like Chip Coffey and Chris Fleming and even Echo Bodine, who's here in Minneapolis, who said, "You know what? We realize that this isn't some sort of parlor trick, or we realize that this isn't some sort of way to get over, that this is an actual gift that more than just a small percentage of the population has. It's an actual gift that a lot of people have, like playing piano or playing the guitar or writing or, any type of gift like that. And it needs to be developed, and we'll take people under our wing and teach them. I think with that, now we've come so far and in such a far way that we can actually, it's safer for kids now for them to come out and to an adult and say, "Hey, you know what? I do see that half a person over in the corner and they're trying to say something to me." And an adult doesn't say, "Oh, go finish your Cheerios," or, "Oh, you know what? We should really get you into a psychiatrist," or, "You know what? We're going to get you in to see Father Flanagan, tomorrow because something obviously is wrong with you."
Or the tagline, "That's nice, honey." That's what I used to hear all the time.
Yep. "That's nice, honey." Yeah. I think it's now, it's different. It's a different society. And, the other thing too is from 1979 to now, there's been a huge change in the way society views things like that. It's just the society has changed. So I think children now are probably listened to more. And I think not only that, I think that as well, society is also looking for answers. I think society doesn't just accept dogma and then move on. I think they also accept that, hey, you know what? Maybe that kid really is seeing what they're seeing. Especially
thanks to all the television shows that are out there now.
Mm-hmm.
Back to your rock. In one of your shows, you had said that you repel spirits. Is that what you're talking about?
I repel shadow people.
Oh, shadow people. Okay.
Yeah. And other, shadow people and other lower forms of spirit. Yeah. It's weird. I and I've done it multiple times. I could do it on command.
So what do you mean by that though? Like, how do you know you're repelling?
I'll give you a perfect example. I've done it more than once. Ohio State Reformatory, where they filmed Shawshank Redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I was having I have this Charcot foot, which is where my leg bone went through my ankle and my foot. Okay. So every once in a while I have problems with ulcerations or wounds that happen on the bottom of them. And I'm not able to walk for long periods of time because I have to stay off it for it to heal. So this was one of those times where I wasn't able to walk copious amounts of places. So I was with a group that couldn't walk stairs and walk a lot of different places. So I was hanging back with them, and I had about 6 people in my group. And in the administration building, if you remember from Shawshank Redemption, there's a huge staircase that goes up and then it splits and it actually goes to the left and to the right. Mm-hmm. And there's a huge bay window, huge picture window, and the moon shines through there on certain nights if you have a full moon. Well, this night we had a full moon, and I'm sitting there with the group. We're kind of talking back and forth and, shooting the crap and doing whatever and talking about the night. And I had asked some people, have people been helping you to get to different places to investigate? Have you had some decent experiences? And we were kind of talking about the night. And one of the guys shouts out, "Hey, Tim, look up there at the top of the staircase. There's actually shadow people moving back and forth across the window." I said, "You don't want me to look up there?" And they're like, "Why?" And I said, "Well, if I look up there, they'll disappear. They'll run away." The guy's like, "No way." I'm like, "Wait, you want to see it?" He's like, "Sure." I said, "Okay, is everybody looking at the top of the staircase?" And I had my head down, like in my lap. I said, "Ready?" And they said, "Yep." I said, 3, 2, 1. And I looked to my left up the staircase. And when I did that, the shadow people ran away.
Okay, so what is it about you that makes them run away, you think?
I've been told it's just a higher vibration. Just a higher vibration. That's it.
So what do you think a shadow person is?
Anybody who says they know what a shadow person is, I think they're lying to you. I have no idea. I think it could be anything from, in the Middle East, they believe a shadow person is something called a jinn, which is evil incarnate. It can ruin your life. It can change your luck. It can, it can do anything. It's a lower form of a demon, according to Middle Eastern cultures. In our culture, some people believe it's benign. It doesn't do anything. There are other people who believe that they've been scratched by shadow people. There are people who have said that they've had violent encounters with shadow people. I had a gentleman who contacted me last night, said that he had the crap scared out of him by a shadow person, that it was 6.5 feet tall. And he had no idea what it was doing in his kitchen. Some people say, well, they think maybe it's a full body apparition that it can't quite come to form. Like maybe it's stuck between forms. I've had some people connect shadow people to aliens. Maybe it's not quite an earthly presence, but it's an alien presence that hasn't formed in front of us. I don't know. There are a lot of different things that can be a shadow person that aren't.
That's interesting. And they always do seem to be associated more with the negativity side of paranormal.
A lot of people put them there. Yeah, but you know what? It's funny because I've been in front of them. I've chased them. I had Tina Mattingly at Waverly Hills and Chip Coffey and myself. I had Tina Mattingly grab me by the shoulder and say, "Come on, we're going to go look for shadow people." Because I told her I'd never seen one up until that time. And she said, wow. "Oh, they're all over the 4th floor." And so she said, "Come on, we're going to go see some shadow people." And I said, "I'll warn you right now that they won't stick around for me." And she said, "Oh, they'll stick around. You'll see plenty of them, honey. Come on." And Chip Coffey came with, because he's like, "I got to see this. If they're not going to stick around for you, I got to see this." So, and we ran chasing shadow people. They would not stay still. And we ran and chased one all over the 4th floor until we got to, it looks like a little cutout of a toilet, bathroom, stool, sink. And it ran right through the back of the bathroom and disappeared. Oh, and wow. Tina said, "I'll be damned. I have never seen a shadow person do that ever. I've never had a shadow person run from me." And
that's incredible. Yeah. Waverly Hills, that's one of those places I just couldn't bring myself to go in and investigate. There's just something about that place.
There are some weird things that happened the weekend that we were there. Father Andrew Calder, who, God bless him, rest in peace. We were in the bloodletting room, in the morgue, and I watched him put a vial of holy water down, and as he was going to, basically, I think he was going to do a prayer. He was going to do something like that. The vial of holy water started to dissipate, like it was evaporating. I've never seen anything like that in my life. I mean, that same place was the same place that I actually smelled sulfur and scat, and I had an ovilus, one of the first oviluses with me, and it kept going demon, 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 demon as I smelled that. And I told Chip, I said, maybe now's the time to say a quick prayer. But yeah, and that was in front of a group of 15 people. So yeah, I mean, that place is something else. I also heard an audible growl in my ear. I was standing next to Chip, and Chip said, "Are you screwing around with me?" And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Were you just growling in my ear?" I said, "No, I heard that too." And then I had 2 other people behind me say, "No, we heard it as well." And then we started looking around the room for any animals that might have been in there. There were no animals, no nothing. It was an audible growl that sounded like it could have been like a large wolf or something that didn't sound like it could have been a small animal. So yeah, there's some stuff in Waverly Hills, I'll tell you.
Do you believe in the Tulpa theory and mysticism and paranormal? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, the Tulpa theory? Mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely. I believe that we can create things of our own making. The mind is a beautiful thing, and will can be used for good. It can be used for bad. And in order to believe in tulpas, you only need to take, even for someone who doesn't believe in the paranormal or supernatural, you just need to look to quantum physics. I had Mark Anthony on recently. We were talking about the electromagnetic soul. And in there, he believes more in a quantum physical heaven and a quantum physical afterlife, more so than ever. And you look at how much quantum physics could have to do with an afterlife. And if that's the case, then yes, tulpas are very real. If I can sit and wish myself to good health, or if I can sit and wish myself into bad health, if I can go down that negative spiral, and things can continue to happen to me until I die. Or if I can sit and I can ask people for prayers for healing, and I can make a miraculous recovery, then obviously I can put together a tulpa, or I can put together a story of an immense haunting, an extreme haunting, and I can make it very real.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that sometimes that's what's happening with some of these famous locations in hauntings?
I wonder sometimes about Jackie on the Queen Mary. I mean, the story that never really happened, and there's no records of it whatsoever, but yet there's Jackie and there's the voice, you know. Yeah, I think I don't want to say too many of them are tulpas. I think there are tulpas that are out there, sure. But as to which ones are made or created and then spun out of control, I can't speak as to which ones are, but I'm sure there are, and they're out there, sure, yeah. It's
interesting. I know of one. I don't know if it's a tulpa, but I stayed the night at the Bell Witch Cave before. In that place, I did the research behind it. Bell Witch Cave isn't even on the Bell's property. It's on a neighboring farm. It's like 10 miles down the road from where the actual property location was. But yet everyone goes to this property and it is haunted. Something is going on there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something to be said too about energies and returning energies and feeding the beast, so to speak. And that again ties in with tulpas as well. If I tell you, well, let's just say this little organite rock that I have here, it says right on the package that it's a force for good, right? So if I put enough belief into it that this is a force for good, that it'll give me good energy, that it spreads good energy, then obviously it spreads good energy in my house. But the fact that it's a blue and purple rock, I could very much assimilate it with evil. And if you were to tell me that it was there to draw in the spirit of an evil witch doctor that wow. That it were, look at that. I said the spirit of evil, and all of a sudden you lost all your lights there.
I know. It's on a one of those motion detector things. You have the warehouse.
I was going to say, look at that. I summoned the spirit of evil right there in your studio. But this magic rock summons the ultimate spirit of evil. Then you have to think for yourself. Well, wait a minute. Does that rock actually summon the spirit of evil? Or do I really want to get close to it? Or I can make up a whole legend for you that, back in the 900s, a ship was found shipwrecked on the outskirts of this island. And it was just this rock that was laying next to the ship with a note that was scrawled in blood that said, "Beware the rock," and I can make up things from there. And that would make you think that, well, maybe it is the rock. Maybe the rock does summon this horrible creature. And, now I have to wonder, and it's just a rock that's supposed to help bring good tidings. I don't know. But, we can spin ourselves into a tizzy, from left to right and right to left again. And really, it just plays upon the mind. But yet we're feeding it that energy. And again, if we're talking about the realm of quantum physics, we're feeding energy into a place or a location. And when it happens over and over and over and over again, maybe that place retains that energy. And we're just feeding it like a piggy bank. We're just putting more and more and more and more into it. And then we leave that place and it becomes this reservoir. And we've created our own legend.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about radio. You started with terrestrial radio, I believe.
Oh, yes, a long time ago.
And then you moved to podcast radio and iHeart. What was that transition like?
Well, honestly, we started with podcasting back in 2006, back when I was operations manager over at KLBB. And I'll tell you, kids, podcasting used to be, you're all gonna do this when I tell you this. Podcasting used to be this thing that we threw on the end of a program just as a Benny, it's kind of one of those things where you used to just get a phone when you buy a phone plan. They'd throw you a phone and say, "Here, have a phone." It's kind of neat. It'll help you make calls. We just used to throw a podcast out there as an audio record of what we did. And you could play it the next day, and hey, you could hear it if you didn't hear it live on the radio. And it was just a throwaway thing. So oddly enough, in 2006, when we were doing Darkness Radio, we discovered, we were doing a live show on a radio station, and it was one of those things where as we were doing the show, we were putting up the podcast, and we knew we had a certain amount of listeners on KLBB. Like we knew we were getting about 3,000 listeners on KLBB. But then when we put up the podcast and we started hearing from people worldwide, we're like, wait a minute, we didn't mean to do that. That's kind of cool. But we didn't mean to do that. I mean, it was kind of one of those nice little benefits that we were getting. And then when we teamed up with the Ghost Hunter guys and we were doing trips around the world in 2006, 2007, and into 2008, we were like, hey, this is kind of cool. We're getting recognition around the world. But our worldwide audience was way bigger than what we were getting locally. And then it was actually we moved over to iHeart in 2008. And when we moved over to iHeart in 2008, we were trying to tell them, you know what, they were also doing podcasting too. But again, it's a freebie. It's just something that we throw out there. You do your show, you upload your podcasts, and that's it. It's just kind of there. It's like, oh, by the way, if you missed an episode, go back and listen to the podcast. They didn't know how to monetize it. So we were trying to tell them, hey, you know what? There's a way to monetize this. You can make money off this. And they laughed. They're like, yeah, right, whatever. No, and we're like, no, you can monetize this. You put an ad in the middle, you put an ad in the beginning, you put an ad at the end. You can make some real money with this. Mm-hmm. And like, you can't put ads on this thing. It's a freebie. And they, and for years we fought the system. We had a friend of ours who we went to college with, who was actually kicked out of a national public radio symposium because he got up in front of the audience. This is, again, before they charged for anything for podcasting. He said, you know what? If you charged 25 cents for an episode of Car Talk, you would make $1 million a year.
That's a lot.
He got booed.
And he got thrown out.
And they booed him off the stage.
Wow.
So, and he was a consultant for like MTV, and he had big time consultant jobs for Viacom and other major corporations. So, and he was way ahead of his time. So there's the fact of the matter is that we've always been ahead of our time as far as this podcasting thing went. Now, people have asked, well, why hasn't Darkness Radio done the video thing? And the whole reason being is that there's always been especially the last 4 or 5 years, has been a contract, and it's been for audio. There's never been a video component. So that's kind of the answer to that. But as far as the radio thing and podcasting, kind of losing track of the question here, but basically it's the transition to iHeart was interesting in that they were never ready for us until we left iHeart. Then they kind of got an idea of what they were doing with the iHeart Radio app. Even when we left in 2017, they weren't really ready. They were just starting to get a hold of what they were doing with the iHeart Radio app. They kind of knew what they wanted to do with it. It was just an app that featured their podcasts, but they hadn't monetized it yet. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like, well, we've got all these radio stations we're putting on the iHeart Radio app. Then they were starting to add podcasts. But I'll tell you, I'll tell you an interesting story. There was, we had Zach Baggins on Darkness Radio, and our phone lines were blowing up because people wanted to talk to Zach. Well, then I had kind of like a hotline or a red line, a hotline in the studio, and it was blowing up. So I pick it up and I said, "Studio line, this is Tim," and it was the engineer. And the engineers don't like to be bothered after 10 o'clock at night. But he picked up the phone, and I picked up the phone, and he goes, "What the hell are you doing in there?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "What the hell are you doing in there?" And I was like, "We're doing our show." And he goes, "Who are you doing the show with?" And I said, "Well, Zach Baggins from Ghost Adventures." And this was like well into, I'd say probably their 4th or 5th season. I mean, they're pretty established at that point. And he goes, you crashed our servers locally. You crashed the servers in Cleveland.
It's amazing.
They're crashed. And he goes, and now I'm getting crap from corporate because they're up and they're trying to get their servers back online, and I'm trying to get my servers back online. So he goes, don't do it again. And then he hangs up.
Now, was that from all the people calling in?
That was from all the people trying to live stream the show at the time. So I'm like, so instead of, hey, congratulations, you're doing a great job, it was, don't do it again.
Oh, that's crazy, though. Well, so one of your first guests, though, was Jason Halls, right? From Ghost Hunters?
Yep. He was the very first one in 2006, January 1st, 2006. And then I just had him on the first weekend of 2022.
So you had some really just about everybody on your show, haven't you?
We have. Yeah, we have. It's amazing. If you go down the list of, it's like a killer's row of paranormal, not to brag or anything, but it's a killer's row of paranormal people, really over the years. But yeah, there's been a lot of great guests. Yeah.
When I listened to you on your show, I could tell that you've done the research behind your guests and read their books, and you're just very authentic when you interview people. Is there a specific guest that, it's one of the things, by the way, of why I really appreciate your show and enjoy listening to your show. Is there a guest that really stands out to you that you've had?
There are a few. There's one that's actually not quite paranormal, but I had him on, oh gosh, it was a couple of years ago now. He was on the trail of Jesse James Treasure.
The Last Templar Treasure? Yeah,
the Last Templar Treasure. You remember him. Yeah. He was interesting. Just reading his book and the different, I remember the treasure map, seeing the treasure map and thinking, at first I thought, man, maybe this guy is a little out there. But then seeing what he had in the book and reading his book and going through the interview with him, I talked to him a little bit off air, and then he showed me one other map that he didn't really talk about on the show. And he kind of knit it together for me. It's too bad he didn't knit it together for the audience. I know, right?
Right.
But yeah, that guy, unfortunately his name is escaping me right now. I think I have his book down there actually. But
yeah, I don't remember his name either.
Yeah, but that guy was particularly intriguing. There's a guest by the name of Frank Milburn who I had on recently on True Crime Tuesday, who is a former British intelligence operative. And man, you want to talk about getting hit with the fire hose. We talked about, he's got information on top of information. I'm going to bring him back on the paranormal side of things because he's got a lot on UAPs and UFOs. But he's got everything from UAPs, UFOs. He's got stuff on Prince Andrew, which I don't know where it fits in my shows, but he said he's got a ton of stuff on Prince Andrew, which I guess is cringeworthy. But we talked about what the name is escaping me. Syndrome. Cuban. Help me out here. It's been in the news a lot lately. The syndrome where they hit you with the RF radiation. I can't think of it. Havana syndrome. There we go. Havana syndrome. So we talked about that on True Crime Tuesday. And this isn't like, I suppose this is how they do it. I guess this is how they do it. He pulled out CIA documents. He pulled out other documents from other countries and actually sent me a couple of the actual memos. I mean, I actually was sitting on a few memos and asking him questions based on the memos. So it's not like, I was just guessing, I actually got to see some of the stuff. So yeah, very, very intelligent guy. Very intelligent guy. Very, very interesting guy.
One of your most popular shows, I did some research on you, was when you had that guy, I forget, is he Canadian? His name is James Randi. He was the magician. He just died recently.
Oh, yeah, James Randi, yep.
And he was running that $1 million paranormal challenge.
Yep.
Can you talk about that guy at all?
Sure. James Randi was very interesting in that he was not a skeptic. He was a cynic. And James Randi was he liked to call the paranormal woo woo. It was not to him anything that was anything near real. We had him on a couple of times having to do with the $1 million challenge. Of course, JREF was James Randi Education Foundation. And Lou Gentili was a man who was an HVAC, by day was an HVAC specialist. But at night was an investigator who claimed he could get an EVP from anywhere, anytime. Okay. And wanted to he claimed that Randi was running from him, that Randi would never give him a proper test. Randi, of course, ran all of his stuff through, I'm trying to remember which college. I don't remember which college off the top of my head, but it's a scientific department. I don't think it was Duke, but it was through a scientific department so that it would be double and triple checked to make sure that everything held up to scientific standards. Basically, Randi would run you through so many hoops that it would be almost impossible to win this $1 million, right? Many people came forward to try to win the $1 million. Nobody ever won the $1 million JREF challenge. It just never happened. But again, Randi said, well, obviously, if you can come through and you can provide your gift and prove it more than once, and do it over and over again on command, you have a gift. And of course you deserve the $1 million, but many people can't do that. They can't come forward and prove it time and time again. For example, let's say I come forward to JREF and I say, well, I've got a gift and I can speak to the dead. Well, then Randy would set up a test and say, okay, if you can speak to the dead, and what we're going to do is we're going to set up 10 envelopes. And there's a word in each one of these 10 envelopes. You don't even have to get all 10 envelopes right. You just have to get, it's like 3 or 5 out of those 10 right. Once you do that, then you win the challenge. Surprisingly, in a lab setting, there were a lot of psychics who couldn't do that. You know, even though they claimed their gifts were that good. I'm surprised that there weren't remote viewers who didn't try this challenge, because a remote viewer, in order to, especially a remote viewer that works for the government, has to be able to hit, I think it's within 50 to 60% of most of their targets. So Randi essentially never really paid out on this. What happened with Lou Gentili, however, Lou Gentili and James Randi, which, by the way, I believe the archive is up on Stitcher for that show. You can go and listen to it. They had a knockdown, drag out fight on their show. It was a screaming match between the two of them, and they each had a chance to present their side as to why they thought they were either going to win, or what, you know, why Lou thought he was going to win, why James thought that Lou was full of malarkey and why he wasn't even going to come close. The two of them came together. They argued for a bit. They were working on setting a date, and then unfortunately, tragically, Lou Gentili died. Okay. James Randi returned to make another appearance on our show. Actually, he made, I think, 2 more appearances on our show, just to kind of talk about the paranormal in general. Now, James professed to say that, oh, I'm not a cynic. I'm not a cynic. I do believe if you can show me my boy, he would always say my boy. If you can attempt to show me that the paranormal is real, if you can open my eyes to it, well, then by gosh, I'll believe that the paranormal is real. But in the meantime, no one has shown me in all my years, no one has shown me that anything in the paranormal is real. Now, what I find sad is that when Randi died, you know, and there's a documentary out there, and if about Randi, and if no one has watched it, I suggest you watch it. James Randi found love, and he was in a relationship, and he was somewhat happy. And I think it's particularly sad that a man who had found love, was happy doing what he was doing in magic, and set up the James Randi Education Foundation. I would think that a man who essentially had at one time had it all went to his grave thinking that he was going to end up worm food.
That's really sad. It's like you wouldn't have any hope.
Yes, there's no hope. There's no, you know what, I'm going to go on and I'm going to wait for my significant other on the other side, and maybe they'll join me there. And just that you're going to get snuffed out like a candle. And that's going to be it.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you about Bob Lazar. We're just about out of time.
Yeah.
He was on your show too.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Lazar with Area 51 and flying saucers.
Okay. I've driven by the place. What would you like to know about Bob?
Is he real or is he not real?
Oh, that's a good question. After having talked with other people, I think if you try to judge Bob on his own merit, I think Bob believes Bob. And when you talk to other people who have been in Bob's presence, they believe Bob as well. It's hard to, I'll put it this way. I'll preface this with this. It is hard to believe a person's story unless you've walked in their shoes. Mm-hmm. It's hard to bite on a story unless you've seen what they've seen. I've never had a full-on experience with aliens. I've seen what looks like a weird light in the sky with my nephew. One time, my nephew, when he was younger, wanted to know how you look for UFOs. And we had this weird experience up at the lake. I said, "Oh, just signal it with a flashlight." And all of a sudden, this light went up mysteriously, then came back down, then went to the left, and then came back to the right. And then it got bigger, and then it went smaller. And then my nephew went, "Is that a UFO?" And I went, "I don't know what the hell that is, kid." I just can't tell you what it is. But I didn't want to put hope in his head either, But, as far as Bob, I'd like to think that his experience is true to what he says, and that what he says is real. Since I last heard Bob's story, and since we had him on the show, I personally have heard a lot of people's stories and seen other things and seen some stuff for myself. So I'm not one to judge Bob's story maybe the way I judged it to begin with. So
right.
I would just have to say at this point, until I walk a mile in his shoes, I'm not one to tell Bob that he didn't experience what he didn't experience.
Have you been out to Area 51 at all?
Drove past it. And
I drove up to the gate.
And actually driving past it, which is kind of creepy. If you know what a UFO cloud is?
No.
A UFO cloud is a low hanging cloud. Like a lot of times you can look out into the sky in Nevada and not see a cloud, just blue sky for as far as you can see, except for one tiny little cloud just floating in the distance, just enough to cover up a saucer. Okay. And this cloud will follow you no matter where you go. And we had one of these. We were driving from Vegas, picked up the rental car in Vegas, and we were driving up to the Goldfield Hotel. We were doing an event with Ghost Adventures, and it followed us for a good 100 miles.
Oh, Tim, I go to the desert all the time, and now I'm going to start looking for those.
It was right off our right side. I mean, we're driving up the highway, and it's not like this thing was, 10,000 feet up. It was, 1,000 feet. 1,500 feet. I mean, we're just sitting there looking at it. And I looked at Dave, he looked at me, and I went, "Is that what I think it is?" He's like, "Yeah, that's a UFO cloud." And I went, "Why is it following us?" But it followed us, and we drove right past Area 51.
Did you stop at all? Anywhere?
We stopped at the Cherry Pit, which is a gas station / and they have little UFO cutouts that you can put your head in. Little alien cutouts. And then they got the trailers out back. We didn't partake of those, but yeah. But that's the only stop we made up on the way to Goldfield. Yeah.
So what does the future hold for you and Darkness Radio?
I'm actually excited about the future. The future is a little bit of the past mixed with a little bit of some surprises. It's kind of old home week mixed with new friends. Put it that way: new friends, old guests, new guests. Everything old is new again. Put it that way. And what I mean by that is the best days of the show were the days where we were having fun. We had a lot of cast members, a lot of people who brought a lot to the gumbo, put it that way. So I went out and I tried to get commitments from Mally Fox as much as she can with Her to Life, which is very busy. I tried to get some commitments from Jessica Freeberg as much as she's busy. Try to get her in there in the mix as far as supernatural news. Beer City Bruiser is one guy that I added to the show. A lot of people say, why do you call him Beer City Bruiser? Why don't you call him by his real name? Because that's his entertainment name. I don't know. That was one of the questions somebody asked me the other day. Why do you call him Bruiser? I don't know. Why do you call a peach a peach? But Beer City Bruiser, I brought him in. He used to wrestle for ROH, Ring of Honor. But people don't know, either people don't know this. I keep telling them this, but they don't seem to want to accept this. Bruiser is a seasoned paranormal investigator. Like, I can sit down and this guy can run circles around me, but people don't want to seem to listen to this. I don't know why. He revealed on the show that he had been to the Demon House site.
No way.
Yeah. He had an experience at the Demon House site. That he's been all around this country and been to different haunted hotels and had experiences in different haunted hotels. He's brought his equipment with him to different places around the nation. And his curiosity with cryptids and all this other stuff is just amazing. And he dives headlong into this stuff. So everyone's like, why do you have the meathead wrestler on? Well, I have the meathead wrestler on because he's probably more excited about this stuff than you are. So I have him on Wednesdays, and I also bring him in occasionally on Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals on Stitcher Premium on True Crime Tuesday. So we've got two of the old cast, one on the new cast, and we're kind of bringing some fun back to the deal. And then and also some guests some old guests you haven't heard from in a while, some new guests I think you'll be excited to hear from. Today, as we tape this, the show is Destination Fear. So we hear from Dakota Layden and Tanner Wiseman, and we're talking about Trail to Terror, the documentary that's on Discovery Plus. And it's that thing where I want to tell really good stories. I want to tell people stories. I want to tell interesting stories, and get to the bottom of people and what drives them in the paranormal field, what drives their fears, what drives their interests, or if they're interested in this paranormal field, what drives that? If they were scared by something in this field, why were they scared? And what attracted the paranormal to them? Sometimes people bring this thing upon themselves. Mm-hmm. What did they do? Yeah. What did they do to bring that to them? Mm-hmm. I think sometimes that's missed in all of this as well. So, tell good stories, have a little fun, bring the cast members back into it. And, I think that's the exciting direction we're going with Darkness Radio.
Well, Tim, I'm really looking forward to seeing what your mark on the show is going to be moving forward. And thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a good time.